The views or opinions expressed on Ann Arbor Inclusive do not necessarily reflect the views or opinions of the City of Ann Arbor and the Commission on Disability Issues. For more information about the Ann Arbor Commission on Disability Issues, please visit a2gov.org/disability resources.
Hello everyone and welcome to Ann Arbor Inclusive. I'm Zach Damon. We have a wonderful show for you today as Al Blixt, the board chair of Intentional Communities of Washtenaw, joins us in studio. And Al, I'd like to get the ball rolling, shall we?
Sure.
So first of all, thank you for being on the show.
You're very welcome. Always happy to see you again. We've had other connections and it's nice to be with you on this show.
Thank you. So first, Intentional Communities of Washtenaw, or ICW as they like to be called, began when a small group of Ann Arbor residents recognized the need to create an alternative housing option and services for their children and individuals with developmental disabilities. But I'm curious, what was it that led you to start working on this?
Well, in 1983 we had a son, our second child, who was born super premature at 3.5 months and spent 4 months in the neonatal intensive care unit. And developed significant developmental disabilities. So by the time he was approaching the end of his high school years and he had been in a special education program, it was clear that long-term planning was needed for his life. And we became connected with other families who had young people with developmental disabilities, cognitive impairments, not so much physical disability as cognitive impairments, people on the autism spectrum. And increasingly, which was not necessarily true in prior generations, this generation is keeping those kids at home. They used to institutionalize these people.
Wow.
So the idea now that you have to figure out what's the long-term plan for mom and dad. Because this young person's not going to be, you're not going to be around forever, and that person wants to have a life. So beginning about 12 or 13 years ago, we got a group of families together who were interested in thinking of a solution. Really the only viable solution at that time was the group home, which is not necessarily a good place to be.
Sure.
You'll be safe, but that's, you know, you are going to live with people you don't know. You're not necessarily going to have social activities. It can be a place where there's loneliness and isolation. It's just not a good quality of life.
Sure.
So we were looking for a model, and we looked around and finally found a model in Evanston, Illinois, that was called Center for Independent Futures, and they had an idea for how you could create an inclusive, socially integrative approach and still have people be living independently.
Sure.
So we decided to form Intentional Communities, and we got going, started talking in 2005, and in 2008 we had our first residents.
Wow. And I mean, what was the reaction on your end when you guys got those residents moved in and things really started to sort of, you know, become a reality, the vision that you guys have put forth? I mean, how did that feel?
Well, figuring out the business model took a little work. Fortunately, like I said, we had this model, but the principal idea, the kind of the keystone idea of all of this is that people need a social circle. And if you have 4, 6, 8 people who are people you see every week, and what we did was modeling on the Illinois model was to create something called a community builder.
Sure.
I like to describe the community builder as kind of the cruise director.
Okay.
Right? The community builder is a person who has the skills and ability to be a coach for people to build relationships.
Sure.
And, those people, we now have 4 of them.
Okay.
And we have about 28 residents right now, each of whom has 6 or 7 or 8 people that are in their circle. The community builder's job is to, first of all, to live on site. They get free rent but they can have a day job.
Okay.
But they're there in the evenings and over the weekends, and they not only provide emergency contact if there's something, if there's somebody has a seizure or something.
Right.
But mostly what they do is to organize the social life of the group that they're with.
Sure. So they're more facilitators of activities,
Right.
things like that, and not a bad perk to have free rent.
Right, right. No, and these are wonderful people.
Right.
They really care about this population. So my son now is going to be 35.
Oh, my goodness.
Amazing.
35.
But he has had his own apartment for 5 years.
Okay.
He has government-funded 24/7 staffing.
Mm.
He's in a day program, and he goes and volunteers. He volunteers at Meals on Wheels.
Sure.
He delivers food for seniors. He goes to food gatherers and
Nice.
sorts and stuff. So
There we
4
go.
days a week, he gives back. He contributes to the society. He's
Right.
out of the house at 7:30. He comes home at 3:30.
Oh my gosh.
And
It's a long day.
Long day, and then there's usually an activities, bowls on Monday afternoons. Monday night there's a community dinner,
Okay.
and they rotate in his group like every 6 weeks or so. It'll be his turn to host,
There we go.
and so his friends will be over with their staff. So there's usually a dozen or more people at his house,
My goodness.
and they have game night or whatever.
There
And
we
then
go.
then there's other activities for the small groups every week. So like, in the summertime they might even just go to the Dairy Queen,
Yep.
but there's something to do.
Yep.
They often go to movies and whatnot.
Sure.
But beyond that,
Yeah.
the whole community, all 28 residents, gathers once a month for a Saturday afternoon potluck.
Okay.
And that's an opportunity for people who are thinking about joining the community to get a chance to meet other families, to have social time, social interaction.
Sure.
So we have monthly potlucks, and then on a pretty regular basis, we have evening meetings once a month that are entirely educational for the families.
Sure.
So we would have an attorney come in, or
Okay.
somebody come in from community mental health and explain benefits or whatever. So, and that's also an opportunity for people who are interested
Sure.
to come and learn more.
Wonderful. And I mean, I want to go back to one of your points that you mentioned earlier too. You talked about how most people with disabilities, again, have a desire to live independently, work, contribute to society, and enjoy the company of others. And successful implementation of the intentional communities concept will allow these individuals the choice to live as they wish and experience a far better quality of life. And I want to talk about your vision and mission statement, if I will,
Okay.
briefly, because I feel both of those are very important. The vision and mission read this. The vision states, a future where individuals with disabilities can share the common bond of supportive living in a dignified, productive, and independent manner. And I thought that that was just a very wonderful vision, but also not just a vision. You have made that or helped make that a reality,
Yeah.
and that is just amazing.
Well, keep in mind, you're right, and these are our kids, right? So it matters.
Yeah.
Everybody has their own home. So Andrew has his own apartment. Some people have roommates, but frankly, most do not. So Andrew has his own apartment on a complex on the west side, and there are people who live in that same complex. And right next door, there's a condominium unit
Sure.
where some families have chosen to purchase units for their kids.
Okay.
And then folks like us are leasing. So he has complete independence. He has not only his own apartment, he has his own room, he has all his electronics in there and his video games and all that. And so he has the independence.
Sure.
And frankly, what has happened, which is, I hate to say it, but mom and dad can overhelp.
Oh, really?
And
Okay.
so Andrew, when he moved in, didn't do his own laundry, didn't know how to load the dishwasher,
Okay.
didn't know how to clean.
Sure.
And the coaches that work with him are always trying to develop his capacity, right? So now he does all those things, makes
Wow.
his own lunch, he does all these things.
That is great.
And so that's in one of the ways and the cool part for us is that Andrew comes home Friday night to our house and he stays till Sunday.
There we go.
So he and I hang out and we'll go down to Flat Rock Speedway or
Yep.
we'll go someplace.
Yeah.
And so then, and he returns, but he believes that his home is in his apartment and
Yep.
that he comes and visits his second home,
There we go.
which is us.
Now, what's the plan for tonight? What are you guys going to do?
What is the movie that we're going to go see? There's a movie that he wants to see. Oh, Rampage.
Rampage.
Rampage. Rampage is a video game that he has been addicted to for years, and
Okay.
they've just made it into a movie.
Oh, did they really?
Yes.
Okay. Now, that's the one with Dwayne Johnson. That's
yes.
right, The Rock. Wow. My goodness. Well, it looks like a great film, and I'm sure it will be.
Well, it doesn't matter, because as long as it has George, Lizzie, and Ralph in it, who are the three monsters in the movie, he'll be cool with that.
Wonderful. No, that's great that you guys get an opportunity to get together during the weekends and also enjoy each other's company while him still having his own
But he has his
home
own circle of friends,
Yeah.
right? And his social activities are better than mine, for sure.
Okay.
He's in a university-sponsored exercise program on Tuesday nights. He does therapeutic riding on Wednesday nights.
There we go.
Sometimes they do yoga on Thursday nights.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's just something every night, practically.
Well, and when I was younger, I participated in therapeutic riding. They're a great program, very storied, and wonderful staff there.
And really good for you physically.
Yes.
It's amazing what it does for your core.
Definitely.
It strengthens
That's
you.
right.
Yep.
We got to stay fit, right?
Yep,
That's right.
absolutely.
But I wanted to go back to
Okay.
to the mission, because I think that's also important.
Yep.
And your mission statement reads that you want to promote stable housing options and quality support services for adults with developmental disabilities designed to reduce the isolation and develop skills to live independently in a community setting. Now, briefly, why do you personally feel that that mission statement is important?
Well, you know, you can get custodial caretaking services. The
Okay.
government will pay for that.
Okay.
But it does not rise to the level of having a real quality of life. And
Sure.
I distinguish between what we call the people that work with our staff, we call those daily living coaches,
Okay.
as opposed to caretakers.
Got it.
You get the concept here.
Yep.
The idea is to constantly prompt and train and teach and encourage people to take as much responsibility as they can to make as many decisions as they can.
Sure.
And so for us, the idea of optimal quality of life and optimal independence are kind of what drive us.
Yeah.
And these are people who develop a real sense of independence. They know what they like and what they want.
Exactly.
And they are always outperforming people's expectations.
Okay. Well, and I think they're doing so because you guys with Intentional Communities of Washtenaw are providing them with an opportunity to do that. So the fact that they are outperforming and exceeding expectations, I think, is amazing. I wanted to talk to you because you talked briefly about your son, but in 1983, again, you and your wife gave birth to your son Andrew, who was, as you said, 3.5 months premature. And of course, Andrew has cerebral palsy and is also legally blind. But as you mentioned, continues to thrive and have an extremely active life. But I'm curious, Al, as a parent, what advice do you have for other parents that have children with disabilities?
Well, the couple of things come to mind. First of all is you're not alone. And it's very difficult if I can remember, at least in 1983, we had phenomenal care at the University Hospital, but once he was released, it was accidental that we found out about the special education program.
Okay.
And so many of the parents who come to us have kids who are still in high school.
Okay.
Right? They're in a self-contained special ed classroom or
Sure.
something. And so they do not have awareness of access to resources. They don't know what's possible.
Right.
So it's very, I guess, start early is my first.
Okay.
You know, be aware of the fact that if your child is 16 or 17, it's very unlikely that they'll move out before they're 22 or 23 or maybe 26.
Right.
So you're looking out a decade ahead.
Right.
And you got to think about what your long-term plan is. We encourage families that are that have a person with developmental disabilities in their home to think about the fact is, are you ready? And is this young person, usually the young person's ready before mom and dad are ready to let go because they're very protective.
Sure.
But you have to have access to understand the benefit system because your child is going to be entitled to certain government benefits, and depending on your circumstances, those can help create the independence long term. You have to have an awareness of what behaviorally, what's the potential? You need an assessment of, like, you know, how much am I slowing my kid down by cutting their meat? So, so start early, get educated about what's possible, and make connections. You know, because other parents are very often the best guides to all of this.
Okay. Well, no, and I think you hit the nail on the head. I mean, parents, from my perspective, you know, as a child, they guide you through the first phases of life, and you know, I think you touching on the fact that parents are a guide, but also having that plan, having that long-term plan, and as you said, thinking a decade ahead, I think for many parents would probably be a great advantage.
Right. It's hard for them to they can't, until you see what's possible, you can't, it's hard to plan for that. And that's why we very often will have families who will come and hang out at our potlucks for years.
Oh, wow.
Before they're ready, right? And so in something like intentional communities, it's really good if here's somebody who's thinking about it, they come to a few events, they start to meet some people, they meet some parents, they make some friends, they go bowling, or they do something, and suddenly now this is not a stranger. You know, it's something well, you know, I could, and seeing an apartment or seeing a condo and imagining I could have one of those. I mean, it's just electrifying for these kids. So
I bet.
So the idea here is we're trying to create a supportive environment for families as well as for the young people.
Yeah, wonderful. I think all of that just shows, again, what a quality organization ICW is and the great work that you continue to do.
It may look, you know, like we've got everything figured out, but we're constantly working. We have a very hard-working board. And, conditions keep changing, funding patterns keep changing, benefits keep changing, and you have to. We have a very involved set of families who are trying to create an adaptive business model that will achieve the mission even as times change.
Yeah, well, and innovators often have to adapt, right? So ICW officially, as you said, began in 2005 when 25 families met to make these options a reality. You guys actually surveyed families who had children with disabilities to assess the needs and desires of these families. So, and then you formed that mission statement. But it's interesting too, because what came from that and what came from those surveys was that need, and I really like this term because we talked about it before the show, but came that belief in the need in social integration and how important that was. And so ICW provides social activities like you spoke about each month to individuals living in the communities, but also to the community at large. And these activities have proven over time to allow these individuals to meet in a safe environment and enjoy the beauty of friendship over time. And of course, as you said, families, friends, and advocates of individuals are invited and encouraged to attend. But really quickly, would you mind talking a bit more, again, about these activities, what they are, and how others can attend?
Right. Well, some activities are resident only. So our Monday night community dinners are also like a business meeting for the group. What are we going to do next week? The monthly events, potlucks, are social events, usually from like 4 to 6 on a Saturday afternoon, and those are open to anybody.
Okay.
And then monthly, we have these educational meetings on Tuesday, usually the second Tuesday of every month. It's likely that at 7 o'clock,
Okay.
we will have a speaker.
Oh, wow.
And so like last month we had the representative from Community Mental Health that handles, they approve all the funding
Okay.
for support services. And
Sure.
other times we have, I'm happy to say that we have several communities that have adopted the intentional communities model. So there is now an intentional communities of Lansing,
Yep.
and intentional communities of Grand Rapids.
Awesome.
And they've looked at what we've done and they've created their own version of that. And so
Sure.
sometimes we have those people
Okay.
come and talk to us about what they're learning,
Sure.
what they're experiencing.
Awesome.
So, and we have, you know, those are community events and family education events. We also are very willing to we have a program manager, and that person would be very happy to sit down with anybody that's interested in learning more. And people do feel lost. They come in and they don't even know where to begin. It's
Wow.
you know, it's very typical that people
Yeah.
they don't know what to do next.
Right. Well, and I think it's amazing that ICW of Washtenaw, you know, your community, you guys provide that springboard. You provide that home for them and give them a place to where they are no longer lost, but are
Yeah,
found
yeah.
and have a great community. And on that point, you've provided us with a great video. So let's take a look.
Okay, great.
Alex started living on his own over 15 years ago. The idea was fit in with his neighbors, and this would be a great experiment in independent living. Well, you know what? In 15 years, nobody ever invited him over for a barbecue or anything. He didn't really have very many friends. We chose those words, intentional communities, very carefully. This is a community that someone voluntarily gets involved with because they want to be with their peer group.
Many of us came from a situation where our children were living in another environment, and it was really probably not what we envisioned long-term for them in the future. We all felt that we could provide a better living environment in creating a sense of community amongst ourselves as families, as well as community with our young adult children. And up until intentional communities, they were pretty much doing it alone. And It's a pretty lonely existence for families as well as the individual that they're trying to plan for.
Disabled people, the community was about housing, but it's also about relationships.
Yeah.
The idea is to create a culture, a community, a place, a group of people that are going to be there beyond us. Quality of life was a big part of the vision. It was about creating an environment where people really can grow, and they do that together.
It's very difficult for these young people to form friendships for a whole bunch of reasons, and for them to be able to have folks with whom they socialize on a regular basis and then eventually live in the same complex and go and have activities together is just terrific.
What a great video.
Thanks.
Thank you for supplying that. I appreciate it. Really quick, ICW has residents from ages 22 to 25, and I'm curious, how old must a potential resident be to apply?
Well, actually, right now we've got a range that's a little broader than that,
Sure.
22 to 55.
Wow, okay.
But typically people are, Michigan's special ed system supports children, students through the age of 26. So they're usually in a young adult program, and very often they'll stay home while they're in that program.
Sure.
Then they're out in the real world after 26. So it's not unusual for people to come to us in that mid-20s range.
Sure.
We do have some as young as 22, you're right.
Okay.
And now we have people who have been with us for 10 years who are now in their 50s.
Oh, wow.
So we've got a broad range, and these folks are of varying abilities. Some
Right.
people require 24/7 care, and
Mm-hmm.
some people get by with a few hours a week for somebody to help them balance their checkbook.
Sure. Well, wonderful. And then, is there a cost to be a part of the community?
We are donor funded, and very often families are the donors,
Sure.
but not always. We get grant support, and we have fundraising events, and usually every April or May we have what is our big fundraiser, which is called Bowlapalooza.
Okay.
And it's a big bowling event on a Sunday, and we get corporate sponsors, and so
Nice.
we raise money that way. But typically, we ask our community residents, their families, to make a monthly contribution to support. Primarily, what we're trying to cover are the costs of the community builders. So, if you have community builders who are paying we're paying their rent or their condo fees, it takes several $1,000s a month just to pay for that.
Right.
So I would say the living situation, the family has to manage that themselves.
Right.
Right?
Okay.
So in terms of participating in ICW, we like people to be active. They can help us run a bottle and can drive or support an event or something to make some kind of contribution.
Yeah.
And then make a donation in the $150 a month range, actually, is what most people do.
Okay. Well, and on that point, for those that are interested in joining the community, volunteering, or finding out more about intentional communities of Washtenaw, how can they get in touch?
Well, you can look at the website, www.intentcom.org,
Okay.
or if they like, they can call me.
Okay.
And I can be reached at 734-657-5772.
All right. Well, Al, thank you so much for joining us. And folks, that's all the time we have for today. And I'd like to thank Al again for joining us and hope that you enjoyed the program. Please be sure to tune into Ann Arbor Inclusive next month. And as always, stay awesome, Ann Arbor.